Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order the Tewksbury Finance Committee meeting for February 22nd, 2021. First order of business is the budget reviews, and I believe we're starting with the Regional Emergency Communications Center.
That's correct.
Want me to share the presentation?
All right, Rob, we're going to turn this over to Kevin Lassard, who's the Executive Director of the Regional Emergency Communications Center. Kevin came on board just about a little over a year ago, and has been working for the past year, standing up the RECC. Went fully operational as a regional center in October. So Kevin's going to just go through a few slides he put together in regard to some statistics and some information on the RECC, and then we'll jump into his budget if that's okay.
That sounds great. Welcome, Kevin. Do you want me to present the slides or share them for everybody?
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing?
I'm good.
Nice to meet you, Kevin.
Nice to meet you all. Unorthodox this year.
Doing good, Kevin. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. So just a really brief slideshow, just to kind of give everyone an understanding of where we're at over here at the REC. Yes, we are the Northern Middlesex Regional Emergency Communication Center, but we can just go by the RECC and make it short. If you can advance to the next slide, please.
Yep.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. There we go.
So just a couple of highlights and milestones that we hit since I was, started last January 13th, 2020. Overall, building construction was completed in 2020. We have building occupancy sometime in the spring. We then started the process of hiring dispatchers, training the dispatchers that worked over the Tewksbury PSAP, and everything we had to do, despite the pandemic, was mostly virtual, but some in person. We started that around May, and then ended up concluding with the immediate training of all the new equipment that they'd be using here at the regional in August 2020. With that, we made the decision, along with the town managers and Richard, the chiefs. At the time, we were talking about moving the dispatch operations over from the PSAP over to the REC, and we did that in September 1st. We then went live with Drake at Fire on October 1st, and then on October 26th went live with police operations. A couple things went into that, but basically it went smoother that way, making sure that each department was ready to handle the workload, and then what we were able to do with our staffing. And the last one was we went through some ProQA, which is basically our priority dispatch. Is the company that provides our computerized emergency medical dispatch instructions and protocols. It enables the town of Tewksbury and the town of Drake to get better standardized service when we have a medical call, and give instructions to callers before police and fire responders arrive. So that was the big things that happened this past year. For staffing on the next slide, the staffing consists of myself as the executive director. I work with an administrative assistant who started with me in August of 2020. She does a great job compiling all the reports that we need to do. She conducts payroll for the REC. She does all kinds of different things in terms of grant stuff, reporting, and everything that we need to do to run the center. We then have 4 dispatch supervisors across 4 shifts. We also have them work in the dispatch center, and then we have 12 full-time dispatchers to get us fully stood up to run the regional every day, 24/7, 365. To supplement that, and when we have openings, and what we're trying to do right now is increase this group, is just have some temporary and part-time reserve dispatchers that are trained in this operation in the center. Sometimes they have experience in other centers, so that really helps us out. But it gives us the ability to fill in those slots that we still have open, and what we have with openings just due to normal vacation time and sick time. Just wanted to show everyone real quickly in the final couple slides here some call volume for what existed before, going back to 2017. for the towns of Tewksbury and Dracut. And this is the 17 and 18 numbers. This is the 911 call volume. So we've seen a steady increase. And then the final slide for 2019, a little bit higher up than what we're seeing this year. And from September 1st until the end of the year, we were fully regionalized. And that meant that all the 911 calls came into the regional instead of going separately to the police department in Tewksbury, the police department in Dracut, and then they would transfer the call to the fire department. That all comes in here now and has really since July 1st, but when we were operating in September, we could see the data here. So, I think the 4,900 calls from September 1 on is down a little bit from typical, and that's due to, we believe, COVID related after effects and cause and effects from the amount of people that are actually out and about and using the services. But other call volume is even higher, and there's been more activity on radio operations and CAD entries that what we use bread and butter of everyday dispatch work. So that's just a brief summary of the regional, and I thought it would just be good to show you a little bit of that information. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, anybody have any questions on the slides we just looked at?
I have a question on the guess the data slides. The slide that's up there now.
Okay.
This will probably increase due to things opening up, like doctors' offices and all that kind of stuff now for day surgeries, things like that, correct? But would you suspect?
Yeah, we would think so, because we would have thought the call volume across the state would have gone up a little bit, looking at other recs just to compare. And the numbers are over the year down, but they're not down very much. And we really do need to keep the operations of where we're at. And every center has done the same, if not staffing up, because of COVID exposures and people having to stay safe, but still keep the operation going. So I think they'll go up slightly, but nothing that we can handle with those increases.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Anyone else have any questions on this, or we could just save them for the budget presentation? Okay. So you want me to put up the budget now?
Yes, please.
Where are you? Come on. There it is. I think I get the right one.
Yeah, sure. You could
Yeah, we are.
start with the first tab. That'd be great. Which is that okay? That one right there?
Yep.
I think you're just muted. Sorry, Richard.
Oh.
Yeah, that's fine. You can just go down each line item and give a general overview, and then the committee will stop if they have any questions.
Of course. Okay. All right, so we'll start off with the FY22 department budget for salaries. What we did with the salaries is that we included all 16 full-time dispatchers, the administrative assistant, and the director. And those differences are from the previous years that we only, from fiscal 21, we did see some slight increases in steps. Worked out with Human Resources Director Belanger and Town Manager Montori on just making sure that we had everything correct. What it does not include is those amounts for cost of living increases or any kind of contractual bargaining that may happen in 2022. These were just step increases and just looking at where our staff are at. What we did with reserve dispatchers is that we really consider them more or less temporary. And what that means is that we might have a dispatcher come in here and work for 6 months and work a couple shifts a month, and they take whatever they can get in terms of what's open, but they still have their full-time positions. We don't really have anyone that is dedicated or even able to designate as full-time in the sense of a dedicated shift for part-time. So we just have some salary in there for up to 5 dispatchers at their experience rate. So it is an increase from the year prior, but again, we moved we moved that amount from reserve dispatchers into temporary part-time. The next line, 5132 for dispatch overtime. In the first 4 months of operations from September through December, we did have multiple trainees that we had to bring in from the outside. And either we brought in from other centers that were interested in coming here, which is a great thing for us to get us open, but also to have in the room and have some experience. So with that, we had to train folks, and there was just an increase in overtime as a result to cover those positions and make sure everyone's comfortable and able to work in the center. Took those amounts and then averaged them out over those months and knew that that would go down the next year. But we do see enough overtime in the sense of the dispatchers that are on normal leaves, just like in any department with sick time and vacation time. But the fact that we will experience some turnover, that's anticipated. And when we bring in a new person, it's just going to cost some overtime to get them trained up and have the trainers work with them. Part of this overtime budget can also be supplemented by some 911 grants that we can use for when dispatchers or new hires go through training. So instead of costing part of this overtime budget, we could get it from some of the grants that we are applying for. And uniforms, every year the dispatchers get a uniform allowance, and we're looking at a deduction in that. But the dispatchers will be wearing uniforms moving forward. But we give the option to do so with the union, with the group that we have now. We want to just go into the total operating budget. We're going to go slide by slide with that, Richard.
Yeah, once you get on each item, just give a brief overview.
Sure, of course. So for our energy utilities, what we're looking at there is that's all our natural gas, national grid, and also direct energy for gas supply. So that's to make sure that we can see the increase that we had from opening in 21 and now operating in 22 with the changes to how much equipment is actually in here in operation compared to what was planned and in here when just it was just myself and a few other contractors working in the facility. Repairs and maintenance. So this number jumped up due to the different leases and contracts that it took to do inspections on the fire alarms systems, the emergency generators that we have here, grounds maintenance, HVAC service contracts on the HVAC equipment, custodial supplies, and then also the UPS that we have here. In the event that there's a major emergency, we would then use that UPS in order to get us over to the generator and keep the operation flowing without any interruption to the service. And the company that we're looking at that provided this service contract, it's a little bit high, and we're going to look for another vendor to see if we can lower that. But for this time, it was that's the standard contract price to have that in operation, so we don't have any issues with our UPS. That's operational. So this is our leases and contracts. So this number also significantly, yeah, right there. Thank you. So this number, what I put in here for our annual maintenance for all our different systems, it includes Priority Dispatch, which is our provider of all our protocols that we use on the phone, Professionalize the Center. This is our equipment that we use in the dispatch room itself, taking fire alarm equipment, to take in our CAD, the radios that we maintain, the system security in the facility, Munis software for payroll and all the different expenses. So those amounts before the final three lines are all new again for this coming year with some slight increase. We put in an amount for $70,200, which is for the Q plus for our EMD, fire, and then police protocols, and the entire amount of which is eligible for a 911 grant reimbursement, which allows us to actually recoup all those funds entirely using the language in the grant so that we can have QA and QI, quality assurance and quality improvement of the work that the dispatcher is doing with standardized protocols. and with outside overview of that, with then the feedback delivered by the supervisors and myself here individually to the dispatchers. So we hope to see that applied for and fully covered for this coming year. At the bottom is our DTS, basically the police department is beginning to use that this year now, and coming fiscal 22 allows us to schedule dispatchers using an app and other software to try to tie into Munis to just make sure that we have accountability with scheduling, with hiring. And then also down below that is a tracking software used by many reps in the state to a one-time implementation fee for the first year, but then to implement a tracking system for both positive feedback, negative feedback, and also training to track online in a cloud-based system. That slide's all set. Thank you. So then we have our professional services. We've contracted with Delphi IT Solutions. Delphi provides a huge resource to the rec, but also to the police and fire departments of the towns. We went with them because they bring expertise to the table, and they do some things for us that just an individual person that was maybe could work here just doesn't provide. What this company does is provide a service contract for the entire year with the set amount of hours for the administration of the network, software maintenance and upgrades, and then just the general overall health of the network of the system here for regional and how it connects to the other departments. So the service contract for this year is $55,000. The medical services and annual audits are just standard for new hires and the audits of the center. And then we just have a set amount for just any other supplies, and anything else that doesn't fall into a specific line item is available for, and requesting the same of that, 5,000. Our next category is in communications, and TPX is a company, again, chosen by Delphi and the operations committee, which is the chiefs of the department last year. We're keeping the same system, and what this system does with TPX is provide us with a cloud-based phone and network and backhaul for us to be able to answer the business lines and communicate from department to department, not on 911. So we rent the phones, we use a network software, we use a backup phone service to make sure we have connectivity. It allows us to have voicemails and auto attendant that you might call if you call the center. We also get the telephones, the fax lines, and then also basic cable to provide news and weather, as well as network, the actual network and internet brought in. And this was not included in fiscal 21, and we have it in for fiscal 22. Of course, with any other telecom company, there's always increases, and we already included those new increases for this coming year. Computer, so this is, it's got a little bit on there. Anything that you see with the dash means it was a one-time. You would have seen this in fiscal 20 and then fiscal 21. To just get the center up and running, there was a lot of equipment that was needed to get the operation moving. This includes switches, servers, towers, all the different things that you can see were one time and have been purchased. We will submit a capital planning budget with our support and incentive grant in the spring and really in the summer, which we have to include now a 5-year capital plan. I'll work with our Delphi IT folks on that, and with, of course, Richard. For the Citrix, we have a connection here where we provide a connection to the town of Dracut here through the rec for them to be able to access our CAD and our entire, really our network, to run their calls and to connect their system to us, since the central servers are connected here. And so there's some annual charges there that are increased from $16.75 to $39.51, and then in support services for website maintenance and stuff like that. The rec also uses things like Microsoft 365, so that's your Office package, that's your email system, that is your Windows remote desktops, how to connect from outside, and those charges are going to remain the same. And then down the last few sections there, some of new expenses such as domain renewal for the websites, different sites that we want to maintain and not give up. Some general IT equipment and repairs and other computer maintenance supplies. We asked for about $1,000 for that. But then down below that, there's some spare monitors that we might need to purchase and have in the center. They do fail, they do go down, and to have a good supply of about 4 of those in stock would be great to have rather than rushing to go buy one at the store last minute. And then we also have a cloud backup renewal. That's a new operation expense that we put in there. Anything that's grant eligible, I've indicated that, and there's also a section near the end to cover that. But the $1,200 we estimate for the monitors, we're going to put into our development grant application just in a couple weeks. Okay. So for office supplies, pretty much stayed the same, except we saw a reduction in office supplies themselves. The first year startup was $2,500. They got us all the different equipment that we need in the center, and I think with the $1,500 we can hit that. So that's down to $2,500. And then we have a thing for the rec. It's called dues and membership. So this is just the professional memberships that we have with our communication supervisors group, national groups like NINA and APCO, and all of these fees are actually all grant eligible and full reimbursement to the regional and to the town. So $27.68. We have an item in here for staff development. So this is going to be for any dispatcher all the way up to the director to attend professional development conferences for those same organizations. And the fees of which 2,500 of the 3,000 would be eligible for grant reimbursement as well, and keep about $500 in there for just travel expenses for whoever may attend. Nothing capital outlay. And then this next category just has to do with just picking those account numbers where certain fees and the totals, thank you, would be eligible as of right now. On February 22nd for grants. We may find that others are eligible, and we will include those and apply for those when those grants come open. So that's everything that I have. I don't know if you want to just cover the rest of the benefits information, Richard, or. Sorry, Richard, we can't.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. So the group insurance, that's the health insurance, and that's based on the number of individuals we currently have enrolled in the health insurance plans. We use the Mass Municipal Association health program for the regional dispatch, and this is based on the rates for FY22. Middlesex retirement, this really is a projection based on 12% of the total salary, 14% of the total salary. I'm actually not sure what the Middlesex retirement assessment is going to be until they do evaluation of the RECC, and we're probably not going to know that till sometime in the next year. But this is just a budgeted number at the moment. It could be actually higher than this. Medicare is just a percentage of what the Medicare tax would be on payroll. Opeb is just a budgeted number based on a percentage of payroll, and what we see our Opeb liability is for the town as a percentage of salary. Property and liability insurance, that's based on what the projected premium is going to be from Maya, our insurance carrier. And then we just carry $5,000 for occupational health for any workers' comp injuries. We're self-insured using the town's consultant future comp. And that's it.
Okay. Okay, now I'll open it up for questions. Jason, you want to kick us off?
I'm good for right now. I'm just trying to digest some of these numbers real quick. Can you come back to me?
Sure. Susan, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Rich?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. First off, you can stay in the tab you're on. Are these folks in the fire union or the police union?
So the dispatcher, so the Kevin's position is part of the town's non-union personnel plan.
Yeah.
The same goes for his administrative secretary. The
The dispatchers.
Yeah, and the dispatchers are part of the AFSCME union, which is part of the DPW union. Even though they're a separate district, they're still governed by that contract.
Okay.
That's the way they wanted it to be. They didn't want to break out.
Okay. And let's see, Rob, if you could go over to the energy utilities tab. You talked about propane. Do we have the ability to lock in a price?
Yeah, so for both electric and gas, I just recently locked in our prices for the next 4 to 5 years based on future costs. So we got a really good rate. So I did, I think, a 48-month and a 60-month. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I did lock us in for quite some time.
I can see those skyrocketing. And under repair, let's see, under repairs and maintenance. Let's see, maybe it's under lease. I'm sorry, leases and contracts. Sorry about that. Nope, wherever the Microsoft Office is.
Sure, that's under computers.
Computers. So we have a 20 user license. Are we going to use all 20 users there, or can we utilize that? Say you have 16 people there using Microsoft Office. Can we use the 4 other users elsewhere in town?
I'd have to double check with Delphi on that. The reason why we have it actually 20 and judging by how much it actually costs per user, we were actually hoping to go up to 23 because every time we have a part-timer come in, they need access to the full suite, and that's to register them for courses. So we think we'll actually end up using all 20 or maybe even 23. But I can check to see if we do have any unused, could we somehow transfer them over? But the domain that they set them up with is at the nmrecc.org.
Okay.
We actually use more than 20 now because we have the 16 dispatchers, we have myself and the admin, we have 2 part-timers on the books, and then we use 2 for administrative internal logins within the center.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Dave?
Yeah, just a couple. Kevin, do you feel like what we have in the FY22 ask, is that more of a steady state run rate, or do you expect other changes, additions in personnel or other requirements that you're going to need in the next year or so?
Yeah, great. I don't think in the next year we should see too much change from what we've requested here. We really went through this in detail to say what's everything we think we're really going to need in terms of equipment. And then I think it covers everything that we're looking at. Again, I'm going to be developing more of a 5-year capital budget planning for what equipment is going to come due in year 3, year 4, year 5, and what we need to purchase anew after that. For right now, in terms of salaries, of course, with every dispatch center, my past center and other centers I've worked with, they do have a pretty high turnover rate. Due to a number of factors, but we hope to stay pretty steady. But that's kind of like where our increase in the overtime came from, just due to how much overtime it takes when we start up a new person. Try to use as much reserve and part-time at their lower rate as possible, but just getting the feel for the center for the next year, I think this would be would be adequate.
Okay. And sticking with that capital plan, should I assume that the things that you bought for like 5 and 3 year terms, those will go into the capital plan as well?
Yes, it would be almost exclusively those. The facility really shouldn't have much that we need in the first 5 years. We do have the building turnover officially now from the contractor. We know what to basically expect for major equipment that might need to be changed out, but we really shouldn't see much there. It's really just the maintenance and the repairs that had to go up due to really being open for the first few months now, with dispatch in the center and people working in the facility. So I think we should be okay, but that would all be included in that capital plan.
Gotcha. And this one might be for Richard. Richard, does this facility fall within our facilities and grounds care?
Yes, so Vinnie Bommel, our director, will oversee this facility, as well as we have our building maintenance person that cleans the town hall, goes in and cleans it once a week, or 1 hour for, I think, 3 days, 4 days a week.
Okay, good. And under revenue, like the state 9/11 support grants and so on, I'm assuming those are variable over time. How much do we think of the revenue grants will persist over time?
So I'll start with this one. The support in the rec amount every single year, it should be pretty standard in terms of anytime a center in the state opens up and it's a regional center, they're going to get a certain percentage, as long as the grants keep coming from the really from the state, in the sense of if the DTC were to change something up and reallocate funds, if some other legislation was passed, that would be kind of a drastic thing for a lot of towns to prepare for, and we'd get a lot of feedback on that.
Right.
But the development grant is really the only numbers where you're going to see that those numbers on a plan cycle drop off, unless you expand and bring in another center or another town into the center, which is a strong possibility for our facility in the future. So what that would mean is that we're looking at the support to come in for personnel, the call volume for handling emergency wireless calls, which every rec really does, and then other grants such as training grants and E&D grants. Those should be pretty steady, but the development grant will, when we talk about the assessment costs, will start to go down in percentages over the next few years.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and on that particular grant, we'll probably see that to be higher over the next year to 2 years, but we just use this number, which balances the assessments out to being level funded.
Excellent.
So,
And you touched upon what my next question was going to be, is that what's the outlook for getting other communities into our rec?
well, I think Kevin could speak to this more, but we always have someone, looking at the potential of coming into the center. Various towns have called, asked questions, asked for the plans, asked for information, but no one ever really gets close enough to pull the trigger on joining the group. If times, everything comes down to finances.
Right.
A little bit more difficult financially, towns may make the decision to join, especially where the state's been incentivizing them with paying their full assessment for 3 years and then reducing that. So we've had probably 3 or 4 towns look at it, but no one really has come close to doing anything.
Yeah, I think there's a compelling success story here to tell other communities. So that's why I was wondering how we're marketing it out to get more in.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, whenever he's at meetings, there may be interest. And same thing with the fire and police chiefs. When they have meetings, there might be interest. But a lot of it comes down to cities and towns just not wanting to give up that that territorial piece and given up what they see as oversight of dispatch. I know when I went to another community to speak on this issue, there were concerns about dispatchers not knowing the community, like their dispatchers know the community, missing calls because they don't understand the community, just any small nuances that may be part of dispatching within their town compared to a regional setup. And really, there's no basis for it. There's no data that supports people's fears in those areas. So I think it's going to take a couple of years or for us to show that it works and that we haven't had problems and that the transition was seamless.
And that it's more cost effective.
And more cost effective in the end. Correct.
No, this is a great story. Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks, Dave. Go back to Jason. Do you have anything at this point?
No, you stole my thunder yet again. Thank you, Dave, for those great questions. Again, we have nothing to really base this off of, so we'll wait. I can't wait to see your 5-year capital plan and see how that works out. But thank you very much for putting the numbers together. They're great. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay.
Rob, I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is that? What is our capacity? How many towns can we handle?
So I would just say, I don't think the center size-wise as currently constructed could handle more than 4 communities. I think that's kind of like the sweet spot, just in terms of what we have. If there were similar sized communities as Drake and Tewksbury, we could have 4. If a larger community within Middlesex County were to join, that could be it. But that would be before we would do a study to say, well, what size do we have that we could expand to? And would the state fund all of those expenses in terms of knocking down walls and building different rooms to fit it? A city of Lowell really couldn't come into here at the way it was constructed because we would need a room double the size, and that just wasn't how it came together. But I think we could, within the next 2 to 3 years, I think we'd see enough interest to bring in another town or 2, and then supplement that with staff to run the center efficiently and use those grants to the full advantage of doing that.
Yeah, because I'll second Dave's comment that this is certainly an incentive to join something like this, and I think it's just going to take time for towns to realize it. That's all.
Yeah, of course. We were supposed to see, I think, a couple more groups come through, different chief groups, different groups from within the region, other organizations that would have more of a kind of a grand opening and a big to-do, but unfortunately with COVID, that just wasn't possible. But that may draw up interest in the coming year as things hopefully improve in that regard, and we'll get our social media really up and moving. We just really had to get the center running through the smooth transition that I think we've had, and just get ready for what's coming next. And we could see an interest spike in this regard. I think so.
I hope so. I hope I don't have to call 911.
Well, we're prepared to handle it if you do, but yeah.
I did. I've had to in the past, but last year I didn't. So that was a good year for me.
Okay. I only have a couple questions. Did you say you're fully staffed at this point, or I think I saw that you were looking for some part-time still. Is that true?
Yes, sir. So we are fully staffed with the full-time personnel that we do need. We have one part-timer really that works pretty frequently. He was a Tewksbury part-timer, but with his current job in another community as an EMT and paramedic, he doesn't really get a lot of time to come in here. So we do have some openings that we have on our overnight shift pretty consistently, and we always have the possibility again of a turnover, of someone moving on to another position. So we are trying to get some other reserve part-time temporaries in here, get them through the minimum training that they need, and hopefully they bring in some experience from elsewhere, and we can do a little bit of training on our equipment and our procedures to feel comfortable with them working. But we are advertising that right now, and that we're pretty smooth with the full-time openings that we've filled.
Okay. And with the new hires, potentially you budgeted in training and stuff for that, I'm assuming.
Yes, so that's mostly from the training that we have in here. That's in the salaries themselves, the overtime, but also with our grants. Our training grant that we apply for through State 911 pretty much covers any training that's not already free by using those standardized academies and classes, but then also the grants cover in addition to that, including our recertification of our dispatchers that we currently have.
Great. My other question was on, I think it was the leases and contracts, the 70,000 priority dispatch thing, which is grant eligible, I guess.
Yes.
So is that an annual 70,000? And I don't. Let me ask that. Is that an annual 70,000?
So it's if we implement all three protocols right now, we just have EMD. So if we put forward fire and then police, which was originally purchased by the operations committee, the chiefs decided that it was a good thing to standardize all protocols for how we handle the call when you call 911, what questions are asked of you in a standardized way. So this allows someone from the outside that's impartial, that can take those calls and QA them with a minimum number per week. So they come up with a formula based on our call volume, how many a minimum required to do per week per protocol, and then they give us a grand total. Up until 2 years ago, that was something that a city or town or a rec had to take on entirely of their own cost. In the past 2 years, last grant cycle and this current one, it is in the grant that we can apply for and have it covered in its entirety, because the state's trying to increase how many centers actually use a QA practice. And that allows us to have still feedback given to dispatchers. We can focus, review, and do things on very specific basis, but it's done by someone that's not on the staff, because that means if I hire a staff person just to do training and QA with just our two communities, that's a probably higher number, because you're talking salary and then benefits. So this just lowers that a little bit. We think it will be annual if we use all three protocols, but this is still like a very new thing for us, and it may not be entirely used, and those funds would not end up not being needed.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that explanation. I didn't fully understand what that was, but that makes more sense. Thank you.
Of course.
I don't think I have anything else. Does anybody have any additional follow-ups? All right, thank you for your time, Kevin.
Of course, thank you very much for the opportunity, and good to meet everybody.
Yeah,
Same here. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Thank you. Thanks for the support too.
All right, Rob, we'll go to the fire department.
Covering the name. That's Telemedia.
Why don't we go with the fire department? We'll save Brian for last, since he's here anyway.
Is he gonna hang out with us the whole time?
He's gonna stay anyways.
All right, welcome, Chief Kearns.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to mention what a good job Kevin is doing over at the RECC. It wasn't an easy thing to start something from the ground up, and he's done a great job over there, and the dispatchers are doing a good job adjusting to the everything that's new. So, doing a good job on that.
Thanks, Chief.
So for my budget, I'll just go over some of the things that have changed. Obviously, I'm fairly new to this. I took over in January, first week in January, so some of the budget was already in process by Chief Hazel. But when you look at what we submitted, total salaries for this coming year for FY22 will actually decrease by $30,000. The biggest of that is over $57,000 decrease in regular salaries. That's due to the fact that 6 members are retiring after July 1st. All of them have over 30 years of service, so they're all at the top step and highest longevity, and replaced by newer members at lower pay scale. Now, overtime will increase, and this is in direct relation to the newer members coming in. when we hire someone, we have to send them out to the fire academy for the 10-week program. And during that time period, we lose the 13th person on each shift, which is kind of a buffer we have that if someone's out, we don't have to hire for the first person. So with trying to send 6 guys to the academy, that's quite a bit of time that we're missing. So that's why you'll see an increase in the overtime budget for this coming fiscal year. But like I said, overall, the total salaries is a decrease of $30,000, just over $30,000. As far as operating, it's an increase of almost $57,000. I'll just hit on a couple of things that stick out. The first one being utilities. We've increased that approximately $20,000. Reason for that is the new station we're hoping to have online by mid-December, early January. That's really an unknown of what the electrical and gas costs are going to be for us and the usage. As it sits right now for electrical, the town hall, we don't have it in our budget. The town hall pays for it because, as Richard talked about a couple of weeks ago, there's only 1 meter. So town hall, the annex, and the fire station all go on that same bill. So there's some unknown factors that are going to play into this as we approach midway through FY22. So talking with Richard, we thought $20,000 would be a fairly good number to put it in there as a placeholder. Repairs and maintenance. There was an increase in the cost of inspections for the fire engines. The company that we use come on site to inspect the engines and the other vehicles. So there was an increase on that. Also an increased cost of foam, using a different type of foam. It's more effective and we're using it more often on more fires. With that being said, it's actually saving wear and tear on the engines because we're able to put the fires out much quicker, more efficiently. My concern, as with anything, the fleet is getting older. So, repairs and maintenance is something I'm going to keep an eye on as we go through FY22. Professional services, there was a line item in there that you'll see there was an increase. We're going to have to maintain the opticoms, and that's what triggers the street, the lights, the traffic lights when we're responding to emergencies. Right now, the state maintains them. When the new station goes online, we're going to be responsible for that cost. So there's a slight increase there, but overall in professional services, you'll see a decrease because there was a line item in there for Verizon fleet, which allows us to monitor all our engines, their locations, but also allows our mechanic or the mechanic that we hire, subcontract out to log into the engine if there's a check engine light or something like that. So that was moved out into communications. So professional services will show a decrease, but communications is going to show a slight increase because of that, because the Verizon fleet was switched out. Ambulance supplies, this is going to be an interesting thing. As with many departments with COVID, there's been CARES Act money that we've been able to utilize for that. Ambulance calls have gone down slightly. I sent you guys some numbers on that, mainly because people were afraid to go to the hospital early on back in April and May. So as far as the supplies goes, we think the number that we're putting in there will suffice. You'll notice there was a decrease from FY20 to 21. That's because we changed the way we did epinephrine. As everyone heard, there was a skyrocketing price for EpiPens. So the members of our department were trained into called check and inject, which means they draw the epinephrine, and it's like a tenth of the cost of what we were paying for EpiPens. So the members got trained in that, and that brought that number down. We're hoping in FY22 that the number we have right now should be suffice. The next thing up that's a rather big number you might notice is a grant match. It's $4,355. This is because we have an opportunity to train our firefighters to the level of Fire Instructor 1 through an Assistance with Firefighters grant from the federal government. Minimum of 15 guys will take it. It's probably going to be closer to 20 or 21 guys. It gives them a better knowledge of being an officer. As I talked about the members leaving and retiring, there's going to be quite the turnover in the captain and lieutenant positions also. So I think this is well worth the money. The federal government's picking up the rest of it. It's about a 10% match, and the federal government's picking up the rest. Going to start that program up. We were hoping to do it in person. It doesn't appear that's going to happen. We've been in contact with the Mass Fire Academy, so we're going to do it virtually. One of our members already took it on his own, and it was a very efficient class. They're constantly asking questions in the chat room and stuff like that. So the member has to be there the entire time, paying attention to it, and that's going to be a good thing for us. Ambulance billing, we're at a contracted rate of 3.4% of all collected revenue that we have to pay New England Medical Billing. So you notice that the call volume went down a little bit, but what we took in went up. That's because Faisal had raised, we charged just 250% over Medicaid rates. So the collections went up a little bit, but the calls went down. We expect call volume to increase again. It's already starting to increase. Again, I sent some numbers over to you guys showing that December went up. January's, I haven't looked at them closely, but I'm pretty sure they were back up to the normal numbers again. So when that happens, we're going to have to pay New England Medical Billing, obviously more money because they're collecting more money for us. And the final thing is uniforms. That's the largest increase you'll see. It's over $26,000. When we hire the new members, we have to purchase uniforms for them, but also protective gear, their coats and their pants, and then helmets, boots, and other things. So it's just over $6,000 per new member when we hire them. So that number is showing about a $26,000 increase in the uniform account. And then finally, the total budget increase was $26,749. That's putting forward to you guys tonight with the help of Mr. Montori. So that's pretty much the budget in a nutshell. A lot of the numbers have staying the same. We're level funding it, but there's those numbers that we had to adjust based upon the attrition rate that we're going to face after July 1st. So I'll be more than glad to answer any of your questions.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll start going around the horn here. Jason, do you have any questions?
Hey, Chief, how you doing this evening?
Good, thank you.
Good. Hey, I have a question about what's the question I'm looking at? For bunker gear, do you have a schedule on bunker gear turnover? Bunker gear that is particularly expiring due to not meeting NFPA standards?
Yeah, so what we do, Jason, is every year we inspect gear, check dates, so they're all compliant. This current fiscal year, there was 4 sets I had to purchase. So right now we're in a pretty good spot. We bought 40 sets back in 2016, so that should carry us out to 2026. When a member does retire and their gear is still within that 10-year time frame, is we keep it, we wash it, and that way if we do have any type of fire or anything, we can put it back in service if we have to for the member that needs another set of gear. So just for the pants and the coats, it's about $2,800 for each set.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief. Also, very happy to hear about fire what's the class you're doing?
Fire instructor?
Fire Instructor 1. Fire Instructor 1. Having a brain fart, I'm sorry.
Long day for you.
I'm very happy to hear about that. Hopefully you have a plan of bringing those to Fire Instructor 2.
Yep.
So they'll be qualified to train down at the academy. But otherwise, looks great. Thank you very much for your time, Chief.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, Susan, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay, Rich?
Yes, I have a few questions. First off, welcome aboard, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Could we look at the tab that talked about ambulances? I'm sorry, yeah, ambulance costs.
What?
I know, Mr. Montori, I think I asked a couple weeks ago, one of our meetings, if our surrounding towns charge more than 250%.
Yeah, so with that, Rich, we are on the low side right now. I was in contact with New England Medical Billing to try to figure out when would be a good time to bump that up to probably 300. Her concern and my concern is now with the way it is with COVID and people struggling financially, she's concerned that our uncollected rate would go up and we wouldn't feel the full effect of increasing to 300 this current fiscal year. It's something I want to look more into and discuss more with Mr. Montori to look into doing that, to go up to 300. That's what most of the towns around us. Andover is the only outlier that's way below even where we are. But 300% is the number. But based upon talking to the professionals at New England Medical Billing, I wasn't comfortable right now going forward with it. And I'll be honest with you, Rich, it's partly because still trying to get my feet wet and wrap my hands around a couple things. But it's definitely something I want to take into a harder look at and sit down with the town manager and see what's best for this town and to do that.
Okay, and just so I can make sure I have the process in my head correctly. John Doe on any street calls an ambulance.
Mhm.
It's in Tewksbury. He gets transported to Lowell General.
Yep.
He has insurance. We bill his insurance.
Yep.
But his insurance only covers 80% of the cost.
Correct.
Is he responsible?
He is.
Well,
That's what New England Medical Billing does. But the one thing that we have always done, and I know Chief Hazel did it in the past and the previous chiefs, we don't chase people down and take them to court. If they can't afford to pay it, then we abate it. New England Medical Billing will try to get the money and get as much as they can. But it's one thing that, and I personally would not be even close to being in favor of trying to chase someone down and take them to court.
Correct. Neither would I. Okay,
Yep.
That's the answer I wanted to hear.
Good.
And so, and it's if that same John Doe on 80th Street had Medicare and or Mass Health, is that the same issue?
Those are actually the locked-in rates. So going through some of Chief Hazel's notes when he raised it to 250, it really only affects about 24% of our customers because any of the insurance carriers with a locked-in fixed number, we don't charge them that anyways. It's some of the other insurance carriers that don't have a locked-in contract number or someone that is part of an insurance company with a contracted rate would be affected by the increase to 300%.
Okay, and finally on the runs that we do to the state hospital, in your opinion, do we get the correct amount back from the state, or do we get anything back from the state? Or
as I put in my narrative to you guys this year, and because of COVID and because of the state budget the way it went, our legislative team wasn't able to get the grant that we normally get. We normally get $90,000 from the state. This current fiscal year that we're in right now, we couldn't do that based upon the time that they passed the budget, and they weren't allowing anyone to put anything in it. I think at $90,000, it's a fair number. As I put in some of the numbers that showed, we do go up there quite a bit. So I wouldn't want to be locked into saying I'm happy with 90,000. If we could get more than that, I'd be happy also, because that would allow us to put that towards running the second full-time ambulance that I talked about in the budget narrative.
Yep. So that,
And that's my goal, is that sooner than later, but just to have the second full-time ambulance running. And that money certainly helps with our ability to do that.
how is there a fee or a percentage of how often we have to use another town's ambulance, like call out?
Yeah, I thought I put that in there with you guys. Let me just look up real quick here. Number went down.
Right at 3 hours ago, and I can't remember it already.
Yeah, the number actually went down a little bit because we had A2 in service from January through July. So call volume was down, but also mutual aid was down because we had that second ambulance in service. But we don't abuse it, and I don't feel as though other towns abuse us.
That's fair. Okay.
As it goes to that, it's something we keep an eye on. And of course, when we don't have the second full-time ambulance in service, that's when the calls from mutual aid do go up.
Yep. And lastly, on the maintenance of the signaling controls,
Yes.
is that the norm that the fire department is responsible for it?
So this is what Chief Hazel told me before he left, is that's what was happening, was the state, and maybe Richard might know a little bit more about it, but the state is getting away from maintaining the signaling devices, and it's going to fall on us. I think it's an agreement we have with the police department that we incur the maintenance cost for it, even though we both utilize it.
That's correct, Joe.
Okay, that's it for me right now. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, I was muted. Dave, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Chief, I'd like to welcome you aboard as well, and also thank you and your department for what you do. I think we've got a great fire department here in Tewksbury.
Thank you very much, Dave. I agree 100% with you. The men and women here do an outstanding job, and I'm going to be more proud of them.
Absolutely. Sticking on that ambulance topic, you had requested some additional overtime, and I know there is some additional overtime in the budget this year. Is that going to help the ambulance situation, or was that just general overtime that was needed?
Unfortunately not, Dave. It's going to a little bit, but not. The biggest crux from is the fact that we run 13 members on a shift right now. So that's something Chief Hazel got about 5 or 6 years ago, which gives us an extra member on every shift. So we don't have to hire someone back for coverage when the first guy is out on vacation or anything like that. Right. With us losing 6 guys like we are, I have to send those guys to the fire academy. So during that 10-week period, I don't have an extra guy on those shifts. So if anyone takes a vacation day or personal day, I have to fill for that shift immediately.
Right.
So I think I put in my narrative to you guys, my goal is hopefully by January to be able to reassess that, and it depends what happens with the state funding too. If we get that grant, then it's something I'm going to constantly keep an eye on, Dave, to try to get the second ambulance in as much as possible. But mainly that increase in overtime right now was just to cover while those guys go to the fire academy, because it's probably 2 or 3 different classes I'm going to have to send them, and I won't be able to send them all at once.
No, that makes sense. And thank you for the very detailed numbers that you sent in multiple aspects. I'm a data guy, so I love to crunch numbers and look at things. So it was really interesting, the decreases in certain areas over the last year, completely understandable with the pandemic. Right. But I did see one area where things went up, and that was permits and inspections.
Yes.
That was very fascinating.
I noticed that too, Dave, and it kind of jumped out at me a little bit also. And I think there's a couple of reasons behind that. Obviously, in town, there's more building going on, so we
Right.
issue permits for that. Also, whenever someone does work on their sprinkler system, fire alarm system, they have to pull permits for that. So I think that just all compounded and got that number to where it was. I was kind of surprised to see the jump that high also.
Well, it's funny, it came up in one of the other budget meetings as well, is that the number of permits and the revenue coming in was actually going up. And I found that very interesting during a pandemic. So that's just kind of another number that tweaks me in that direction. Very interesting. Pivoting over to your vehicle list, I know
Yes.
you have some things that you're keeping track of. I was just wondering, and I guess this is for you and Richard, is there anything that we need to be aware of that should be included in a capital plan for the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's something I talked to Richard about, and I think we do need a new ambulance in FY22. I'm sure when we talk about the capital, I haven't had a chance to sit down with Richard and get too much in depth with it. The roads being the way they are, and the ambulances getting worn down. I think next fiscal year we need a new ambulance, and then FY23, I think we have to look at possibly getting a new engine. I don't know if you guys recall, but we had to buy 2 used engines because three of our trucks ended up having cracked frames. Thing about that was they were first year for what they call regen by the EPA, and they had a lot of issues with that. So our maintenance for these engines, a lot of money goes into maintaining that regeneration system for those engines. So ideally in FY23, I hope we can get money for a new engine. But that's something I haven't been able to talk to the town manager in depth about yet.
Just to jump in on that, the ambulance request for FY22 is consistent with the approach we've taken of purchasing an ambulance every other year,
Right.
replacing a new one. So that will be coming forward. The other vehicle that we've talked about in the past, it was actually slated for last year and we put it off, was a new rescue truck. So that might be something we're going to bring forward, but everything that the chief has just mentioned is consistent with what we've brought forward in the 5-year plan in the past. So nothing is going to be surprising to us, or nothing jumped out new at us.
Actually, that's great, Richard. That's exactly where I was going. Is there anything that we don't know about that's going to hit us? That's great.
The one thing also, Dave, about that is the ambulance that we're going to look at now, since we'll be in the new station, it will be on a truck frame instead of a van frame. Right now, we don't have the room to have a large ambulance in the station.
Right.
So everyone I've talked to, we should be able to get 3 years out of that ambulance instead of 2. So it's going to benefit in that sense also.
Excellent. Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I had. Chief, I can't wait to see you guys in that new station. It's looking great.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right, thanks, Dave. Yeah, so when did you say the new station was going to be open? You say end of this year?
Yeah, we're hoping substantial completion to be late October, then the punch list and all that. So, December, January, I think is a safe estimate, talking to the experts right now.
Okay. And I was wondering, is there going to be any cost associated to moving from one station to the other? Is that in the budget?
I believe that's already in the budget, Richard. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a minor amount in the an amount in the construction budget for moving, and we'll probably have some operating funds to help out. But the reality is, I think I can speak for the chief when I say there is not much in that station we're taking.
That's true.
Maybe you can light it on fire and then put it out with the.
With the new phone, it's easier to use.
There you go. We'll put it out too quick at that point, though.
Yeah, let it burn for a while.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about the second ambulance.
Yes.
So, Richard, is this something we might reconsider for fall meeting to allocate some funds for that, or?
Yeah, we're gonna see how things play out in the upcoming state budget, and then we can revisit it in October if we have to. So yeah, that's definitely one of our priorities to keep looking at. And we're gonna try to see what we can do between now and the end of this fiscal year, and then again, hopefully the state budget funds become available down the road to continue it. It's worked out well for us.
Okay. And sorry, I know
And just quickly, Rob, one of the things that the chief and I have talked about, whereas he's already built into his budget this increase in overtime for the 3 new members. If the state doesn't come through with funding in the future, then we can keep this overtime where it is, even though the 3 new members are already past the academy.
Right.
Okay. I know we talked about vehicles. Were we thinking of bringing any forward at the annual, or maybe in the fall, or?
So the goal will definitely be to bring the ambulance forward.
Okay.
Because that usually these take some time to get bid and built. And then hopefully, again, I'll talk to the chief about the rescue truck to see if that's where that stands in the immediate need, and probably bring that forward too.
Okay. I think all my other questions were already covered by everybody else. So unless anybody has any follow-ups, we're good.
I have one follow-up. How is the North Street station holding up?
It's holding up all right, Rich. The issue that we have up there, and we have it in the capital plan, is the fact that the living quarters is right next to the apparatus bay. So it's something, at some point, we'd like to add a second floor to it and move the living quarters upstairs. At that point, as far as structurally, it's all right. The roof at some point is probably going to need to be replaced, but hopefully you can hold off on that until, if we can put the second floor on the North Street Fire Station.
Do we know who owns the land next to the North Street Fire Station when I used to play baseball at Wang many moons ago?
I
believe
it was back at
Raytheon.
one point. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Raytheon, I'm not sure. It is a private company.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief Kearns, and again, welcome to Tewksbury.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the support you guys have given us in the past, and the support of the town manager and the selectmen. We do appreciate it over here.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. Nice job.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, I think we have one more budget, and that's Telemedia. Brian Dorrington is going to go from running the cable operation to presenting. Can you
Yeah,
do
this is
both?
the first time for me. It's different being on this end. So we'll see how this goes.
Denied.
All right, Brian, take it away.
So just as a refresher and reminder, and to the one person watching on YouTube, we are an enterprise fund. So we are not funded through any tax dollars. Comcast and Verizon charge users what's called a franchise fee. And that franchise fee goes into an enterprise fund. And that enterprise fund is only used for cable-related purposes and PEG access. So that's where all of our funding comes from and goes to. Each quarter, we get money directly from Comcast and Verizon. And a lot of communities have reported some losses in percentages in that because, cord cuttings and things like that. But since I've been here, all the quarterly payments have been pretty much consistent. You know, they fluctuate sometimes, but per quarter, I actually have the last one. Comcast, we received $68,976, and Verizon, we got $78,000. So that's quarterly. So we're getting a good amount of money per year from them. That could change at any time. So, you know, I like to keep the budget lean just so we can be able to sustain, you know, PEG processes, just in case the cord cutting takes off. But the good news is, since I've been here, I haven't noticed that into experience. So I just wanted to preface with that. That's kind of how the funding works and how it's structured. So this year, we thought that we'd be able to sort of, since we're a new department, we thought we'd be able to sort of establish a base of what our budget was going to be going forward. That kind of changed with COVID. With that, our mission changed. As you know, we moved all virtual. Things that would have been live, like high school graduation, welcome to Tewksbury, COA, arts and crafts, all that went virtual. So we sort of had to adapt to that. And this budget is, you know, an attempt to figure out what we're going to do for the future. But in broadcast and AV right now, and with COVID and when we're going to get back to in-person meetings, there's a lot that's still up in the air. So I just kind of wanted to preface that before we go, you know, into the line items. So we can start with, and you'll notice that there are some fluctuations between line items from last year to this year. That's also because of, like I mentioned, we're a new department and there's a lot of changes in the operations overall. Repairs and maintenance, we did get a new Telemedia van. So that's going to be something we hope to utilize. Again, a lot of the shoots that we would use it for have been canceled. We will definitely take advantage of it for the upcoming football season, which starts in March. So, you know, that will hopefully improve productions. It'll keep our equipment safer and, you know, make it easier to get around town, and people recognize us and you know who we are. Other changes are so some of the big items for maintenance is, of course, preventative maintenance. Keeping camera lenses fresh, keeping software updated, you know, making sure we have all the right parts and things are working where they should be, so the lifespan lasts longer. That's huge for us. The repair contingency, when you're dealing with technology, especially cameras, a simple drop could, you know, cost you a couple $100 to a couple $1,000. So that's something we like to keep in there, you know, as a contingency. If we want to move on to leases and contracts, this is for the WebEx licenses we have. We're using WebEx now, and we hope to expand that not just for meeting use, but for interdepartmental use. So we'd like to sign up department heads and various other people who we think need to host meetings and get them the accounts that they need.
Sorry,
In addition,
can I talk to you for a quick sec? Dave, I think
no
we're getting
problem.
some noise off your end. If you don't mind muting.
Yeah, I was getting a little feedback.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Rod.
Perfect. Yeah, so the virtual license, the WebEx, we're currently trying to sign some people up now. That's probably going to carry over and expand into FY22. We also we got a new broadcast server when I came here, and that included a few years of free maintenance, the Gold Plus program. I was able to negotiate a discount for last year, and this is something that we knew was going to kick in this year. It's server maintenance fees, and it's really helpful. And it's for our main brain of operations. Our broadcast server is actually the way that we're able to transmit all of our videos to Comcast, to Verizon, to YouTube, to Facebook, to, numerous other different locations. If we want to move on to professional services, that stayed the same. We have a lot of consultants come in. We actually used one recently to come in and set up a NAS drive for us for backup storage and archiving purposes, as well as we had someone come in to set it up so when we do go back to in-person meetings, there's the option to combine virtual meeting with an in-person meeting. So if there were some people who weren't comfortable being there in person and still wanted to be on WebEx, we were able to figure out a way to combine those using a consultant. And there's a decrease there due to other means of closed captioning that needs to be provided via the FCC in the ADA. That's a capital plan that I'm going to present at a later time that will cover that. It's basically a one-time purchase instead of purchasing a bunch of hours up front that could run in the hundreds of thousands. So we'll save some money with that. If we want to move on to communications, that's for our work cell phones and our hotspots, as well as 4G data plans for live remote streaming. We have not taken advantage of that yet. It was budgeted for last year too, because most of the events that were supposed to be live in the field, once again, have been canceled. So we're set up now in the school and in a few other buildings with a VLAN. So we really don't need those 4G LTE cards, but once we start doing more field shoots, that's something that we're going to need to revisit. Hopefully, more events will occur in FY22 and things won't get canceled. Office supplies, that's pretty straightforward. Papers, pens, PPE, anything like that stayed the same. If we want to move on to miscellaneous and outreach, I break out miscellaneous needs for production in terms of things like SD cards, hard drives, DVDs, things that aren't necessarily needed for production, but that are needed for our operations. And I contrast that with what we can talk about next, the next line item, but also the outreach portion is something that we did budget for last year that we haven't really, once again, taken full advantage of. We hope to improve on that just because we haven't been able to get out into the community and go to the events and, pass out the water bottles and the USB drives and stuff that we had in mind. But that's something we're definitely going to continue into FY22. If we go into the other equipment, that's actually, I separate that as the production equipment. So that's the cameras that we need, the tripods that we need, computers, lights, all of that stuff that goes into the actual production. And that's, probably the most pricey timeline. Technology is constantly changing. We're constantly needing to buy new types of cameras. For instance, we just had to purchase a bunch of HD webcams that I would have never even thought of last year that we would need, but because town staff and needs to be able to communicate now interdepartmentally via video, we had to add those type things. Same things with some board members that they were having trouble with their audio problems, so we had to get them advanced headsets. Again, things that we definitely didn't foresee via COVID, that luckily we had that money in last year's budget to be able to cover it. And, we anticipate a lot more of those expenses this year. So we decided to keep that the same. If we move on to travel. There are some industry events, NAB, Infocom, and ACM being the big ones. The technology events, NAB and Infocom, are ready to go. Like I said, with all this new technology, this Zoom, WebEx, all of this stuff was really meant for AV in interconnectivity between people in the same company. It was never really meant for broadcast, but there's so many different opportunities now and so much technology that, these Infocom and NAB have actually committed for October. Whether or not it's going to be safe for us to travel there or not, who knows? The conference that we normally go to is ACM, and that's for the Alliance for Community Media. That's where all the PEG providers go, and that is in June that is going to be in June 2022. So, I foresee that potentially happening. Dues and membership, this is just simple. We belong to 2 cable access organizations. One is a local one called Mass Access, and the other is ACM, who I just mentioned, puts on the national show. There's a decrease here because we decided not to join NATOA. Looking over it, it didn't seem like there were a lot of benefits that came with it. And, like I said, I'd like to keep this budget as lean as possible, always having in the back of my mind that franchise fees could go down at any moment. So that's just a brief overview. If anybody has any questions, feel free.
Okay, we'll go around again. Jason, do you have any questions?
No questions at this. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, Susan?
No, thanks.
All right, Rich?
Boy, I'm quite surprised that the cord cutting hasn't impacted the bottom line as much as I thought it would have. I think we've got to be careful with that in the future, because I do think it's going to start increasing as time goes on. People are just going to, I call them the Ed Markey fees on your cable bills are just a lot. And I know it covers things like this, which is great, but I think people are we're just going to be real careful year to year, quarter to quarter, whatever, because I think we're going to take a hit at some point in time. But other than that, I think you're doing a great job. The budget looks fine to me.
Thank you. And yeah, Rich, just to address that, you're totally right, and that's what we've been hearing. I sort of have almost a different take, hopefully. When you look at all these bundling services and how much people put together, a lot of the times it can be more monthly. It's more a la carte, because I'm sure that there's lots of stations on Comcast and Verizon that people don't watch. But there's some bills right now in the Massachusetts state legislator that will actually try to apply franchise fees to things like Netflix, Amazon Prime, all those streaming services, which they will just pass on to the consumer, which will obviously increase the prices in those streaming services. So there is a chance that these streaming services could start being a higher price than some of these, Comcast and Verizon bundles. That's yet to be seen. That's me trying to be optimistic about it. But I do take when putting the budget together, I do take your philosophy in mind, hoping for, the best.
And Rob,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, if I could just jump in quickly on that, to Rich's point, because we just don't know what's going to happen in the future, and if these fees are going to go down. But one of the things that Brian has been stressing throughout the budget is just the lean approach that we have to this budget. We take in somewhere around 600 to 700,000 and franchise fees from both Comcast and Verizon. Now that's going to go down over the next year because our franchise fee with Verizon is going to go from 5% gross revenue down to 3.5%. So we'll see a reduction there. Now, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong here on anything. But one of the things that we still have a surplus between what we're going to collect in revenue compared to what the budget is of about $250,000. So we do have cushion there. I don't see that gap, decreasing anytime soon. We don't have a lot of large expenses like other communities in regard to a studio, so that's key. But then the last thing that's important, we have about 1.9 million in retained earnings for this enterprise fund. We don't have any large capital expenditures coming up in the next 5 years. Anything that we're doing is just going to continue to harden and build upon what we have. So if we do run into any really tight financial times, we do have a couple of areas to go to, and that's the surplus we have already built into the annual operating budget, as well as a healthy reserve to help us through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I meant to mention the Verizon portion, and yeah, Richard is totally right on the expenses. A lot of these cable access stations have to pay for studios. They have to pay for lights because we're out of town hall, but luckily we're able to take advantage of the high school's studio, which we don't have to pay to keep the lights on there. We have helped them several times. We've made improvement on their lighting grid. We made improvement on their TriCaster, which is their switcher. And, we've developed a good relationship with them. Again, that's one of the other things that it's a very small studio. I don't know if you've ever seen it. We haven't been doing many shoots there due to COVID. But yes, so we definitely do have a lot less expenses and try to keep as lean as possible, always thinking about the future.
This was just one last thing. This was a conscious effort on our part when we set up the Telemedia department. We didn't go the traditional route that other communities have used, which is setting up a nonprofit that ran cable access in a community, and the town would send the money over to the Cable Access Corporation. We wanted to have control over the finances, ensure that expenses were being reasonable and being watched in case there was a downturn, and treat it like a department, but with the autonomy of cable operations and freedom of speech and things like that.
Do we? I'm sure you know. When do the Verizon and Comcast contracts come up for renegotiation?
So right now we're finishing negotiations with Verizon. Theirs expires at the end of might be either this fiscal year or calendar year. It's coming up shortly.
Yeah.
Then they'll kick into 3.5%. It'll be a 3-year contract. Is that correct, Brian? They don't want to go
I think we're shooting for a 5-year contract.
Right. They don't want to go more than 5 years anymore. We just recently, over the last few years, finalized a new Comcast contract that's 15 years.
Wow. Okay. And what percentage are they paying?
3.5%.
Oh, they're 3.5 too. Okay. Boy.
Comcast treats it differently because they truly are a cable provider.
Yeah.
Where Verizon was phone first, getting into cable.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Dave?
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I just had a quick question on, I think the temporary part-time, there's still a position open, or how's it? Are you looking for somebody?
We just filled that position.
Okay.
Actually, he's able to work starting tomorrow. He's going to be coming in for training. He's very capable. He's a high school student, and we're very happy to have him on board.
Great. That's good news. And another question I was going to ask, but it's not really related to the budget. But I've been watching some high school basketball games, right, on my Verizon. station, 30, whatever, 2 or something. Is there anything we could do about making it a clearer picture? Like, is that any hardware on our end, or I know it's a low def channel, but it's just it's just not a great picture.
Yeah. So one of the issues is they're all standard definition cable access. We don't have HD channels. We do output it HD. So Comcast and Verizon both down convert it when it goes out. It looks a lot better in person. In the new contract with Verizon, there is going to be the option for a single HD channel. And hopefully when we renegotiate with Comcast, we'll get that as well. So that will greatly improve the quality of it, for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know if there's any equipment on our end. I didn't figure it was. I figured it was something on Verizon. But and then I thought, well, geez, I haven't watched standard definition in a long time. Maybe I'm just not used to it.
Yeah, you know what? Check it out on YouTube. It looks a lot better. We always upload them, with some added graphics the next day. I know it's not live, but this was really, the sports was a big change for us, actually. Ron Drew, the athletic director, who's great, he came to us and he said, parents can't go to these games. We need a way to get them to see them. JV boys and girls basketball, JV hockey, varsity hockey, and varsity basketball. So we were kind of, we can always improve on the equipment, for sure. We were kind of doing that a lot to really have access for the parents to see their kids. This is something that I think parents are going to want long term. It wasn't planned that we'd cover every JV and varsity game, but it's worked out really well. So that's something we're also going to look into in the future, ways to improve that, ways to incorporate graphics like we do for our football games. So there's a number of emerging technologies coming out to work with those things, because the whole industry is adapting because of this COVID-19. But that's definitely something we can improve on our end. But it also definitely is something to do with the Verizon and Comcast signals.
All right. Yeah, I think it's great that you guys have been able to broadcast those games and stuff.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, and like you said, with nobody being able to go, it gives parents a way to see them play, or even like myself, just want to watch the high school team.
Sure.
I don't have any other questions. Does anybody have any other follow-ups?
Yeah, Rob, one thing before Brian goes, and while we have him here, he had mentioned he has one capital item this year that I'm going to bring forward. We're going to fund it from the franchise fee in FY22. I haven't decided if it's just going to go in the article at town meeting or in the capital outlay budget. But Brian, you want to just give a quick overview of the $174,000 project?
Yeah. So what that is I mentioned it briefly, is the ADA and FCC have conflicting laws when it comes to what needs to be closed captioned and what doesn't. And they're very confusing. And it's also who needs to close caption, whether PEG stations and stuff don't have to close caption. My view is not that we have to, but that I believe we should be closed captioning for our hearing impaired residents, whether it's requirements or not. There are definitely some requirements, and like I said, it's hard to navigate, but I believe that it's a service and something we should to provide. And this will be, it's basically a server that takes the video from our broadcast server. It hits the captioning server, and then it does real-time adaptive captioning at about 95 to 98% accuracy. So, and that will be live 24/7. It's much better in the long run than buying hours of closed captioning and having, either somebody there physically or even using a program like Watson or something like that. They're far more expensive in the long run. But this will provide, 24/7 captioning, and it will also, it's actually pretty cool. It's editable. So for names and stuff, obviously, sometimes they spell it wrong, but if they spell it wrong a few times, if it's like, board member's name who keeps coming up, we can go in and edit it and change it so that they finally get that name. So it's a really cool device. It's something that I think we should deliver. It's something that we probably need to deliver or will be needing to deliver legally, and we will definitely be on the forefront of that. I don't know any other station around here that is doing 24/7 captioning, but I think we're able to afford it, and I think we owe it to the hearing impaired residents to offer that.
Is that a one-time charge or is that
It's going to be it's a one-time capital item. It's a very cool device. It's fairly new to the market. Not many people are using it, but I'm looking forward to that.
great?
I think that's great. That's very forward thinking. I have one more question. I know we have the media lab at the high school. Is there anything we could do with Shawshene Tech or utilize there?
That's a good question. The Shawshene Tech does have their own audio-visual shop, and they do have, I don't know what they have for equipment, but that's something we can definitely look into. We have taken some interns from the high school before, and we helped somebody with their senior capstone project last year as well. So yeah, that's a good idea. That really hadn't crossed my mind, but that's something we can definitely look into.
I would bet they have some pretty good stuff down there.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Yeah, it's a great school.
And if we're part of it, why not use it? Use it to our advantage.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you, Brian.
Sure. Thank you all, and I'll be here.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me do this guy. Did you have anything for us, Richard, or just the snow and ice?
Just before you go on to snow and ice, so for next week, you have the DPW, general fund and enterprise fund budgets. Even though I'm not going to present the enterprise budget to the selectmen until Tuesday, next Tuesday, the 2nd, I still think Brian can go over the budgets with you that night. And any enterprise information I have on rates, I'll have ready that night. I can go over with you. And then the following week, I can go over the capital budget with you.
Okay.
So we can stick to that schedule.
All right. Okay. All right. So we have a snow and ice over expenditure. Did everybody get a chance to check this out?
Yeah, so this is the current deficit we have in snow and ice. This will be funded through the $600,000 we set aside every July 1st from free cash to help address snow and ice deficits. Brian, Gilbert, and myself were talking today. We hope we don't get to that 600 based on the extreme long-range forecast that we have. But right now we're at 440, and that's covering all the storms to date. I don't think it covered this past weekend, which we had people in for some sanding and scraping operations, but the major portion of it's covered through last Friday night.
Anybody have any questions on this?
I honestly thought it would be more.
Okay, I would look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Dave,
Second.
I'll second it.
heard Susan sneak in before Rich. So Susan with the second. We'll do a roll call vote. Jason?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Unanimous. Okay. Let's see here. You don't have anything else you said, Richard, right?
Now, there, I, one quick thing, the warrant articles closed this past Friday. I have a draft warrant. I still need to fill in some capital items on a few articles, so I should have a warrant to you within the next probably a week from Friday, once I get past the presentation to the Board of Selectmen on capital. There's about 31 articles right now, a lot of standard financial, nothing that I can think of that's of controversy. The big issue will be the zoning changes, and that will be coming forward. That's been in the works for quite some time. So other than that, I'll have that ready for you, and the special town meeting warrant won't take shape for a couple more weeks, as I understand the deficit and snow and ice more, and any budgets that need to be adjusted that may have a surplus or a deficit. That's it.
The bylaw changes. Are there any changes from last year, or is it the same article?
I think for the most part, it's the same, but Steve Sarek did make some adjustments that he'll go over with the committee prior to the
Okay.
town meeting.
Okay. Next order is the committee, finance committee reports. I don't think we have anything. Not here. He does a couple of them. Recording secretary. Meeting minutes. So do we have anything else to discuss? If not, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Dave,
Second.
second by Rich.
Aye.
Roll call vote. Jason, how do you vote?
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
chair votes aye as well. We are adjourned. We'll see you next Monday.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Aye. Thanks.
Aye.